Hey, Dr. Mike here. Have you ever heard of threonate? Well, it goes with magnesium and your brain loves it. Stick around to learn more.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Foreverish. I'm Dr. Mike. I'm with my co-host, Dr. Crystal Gossard. And today we're going to talk about magnesium threonate and why that's so important. It's a little, I don't know, can I call it a little special form of magnesium?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not the normal stuff you find in other like magnesium formulas and all that kind of stuff. And to help us understand the importance of magnesium threonate, you know, where it came from, why we have it, what's the benefit, we have an expert.
That's right.
Right? Dr. Jennifer Gu. She is a PhD in experimental pathology at the University of California, Los Angeles, completed her postdoctoral work at the California Institute of Technology in the Division of Biology. She's published extensively in peer-reviewed journals, including Nature, during her academic life. Dr. Gu holds multiple patents and is a frequent speaker and contributor to nutritional journal articles. She's currently the VP of Research and Development at AIDP, and they're responsible for new product development, clinical trials, all kinds of stuff. Dr. Gu, welcome to Live Foreverish.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Dr. Mike, Dr. Crystal.
We're excited to talk about this. As you know, brain health, memory, cognition, these kind of things, brain fog stuff. I mean, people are often talking about helping, you know, to improve brain function, basically. We hear it all the time, so we're happy you're on. So to lay the foundation of what we're going to be talking about today, will you share the overall benefits? Let's just start with magnesium first. Let's talk about magnesium first. What are the benefits and why is supplementation important there?
Yes, magnesium magnesium is one of the most important minerals in our body, and it's a cofactor for over 300 different enzymes in every part of our biological reactions. So it is also a important minerals for the brain. It's actually facilitating many of the signaling pathways involved in the memory, cognition, stress, anxiety. All these functions, magnesium are helping the enzymes are working on all these pathways to work properly. So it is one of the fundamental nutrients of our body.
Yeah. So we always Dr. Chris and I always like to talk about food first, right? And so magnesium, you can find it in leafy, you're the expert here, right? I mean,
Yes.
leafy greens,
Nuts, seeds.
Yeah, she's taught me a lot about where you can find magnesium in food. But we also know that our food supply, food chain, what people actually are eating and not eating, really we're not getting enough, right, Dr. Crystal? So that's kind of why supplementation, I think, plays a key role. But we're moving, let's shift now though, right? So that's magnesium. We're talking about something called magnesium threonate. How is that different and why did we need to bring that to the market?
Yeah, so there's many different types of magnesiums on the market, and a lot of them actually have problems being properly absorbed. Okay, so one of the things you probably noticed that magnesium oxide was in the formula for laxative, over-counter laxative, and that is one of the indicator that it is not well absorbed. Okay, so MACT, which is magnesium L-threonate, is one of the new magnesiums that are well absorbed, it's a bioavailable magnesium source. So the uniqueness about it is that it's not only bioavailable through the intestine absorption, it is also unique in that it is brain bioavailable. So there's research has demonstrated that it is only the only one magnesium that can effectively go across the blood-brain barrier to raise the brain magnesium levels to have a benefit in memory, cognition, and many of the brain-related functions.
Yes, and so when we look at the L-threonate, And I do recall that original research.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed there were multiple, I guess, many research studies within that one larger study. And the magnesium threonate was compared to other forms. So I have two questions. What were those forms in that original research that the threonate was compared to? And can you tell us a little more about threonate? What is L-threonate?
Very good question. So let me bring back a little bit about how magnesium L-threonate was discovered. Okay, magnesium L-threonate was actually discovered by a professor, Dr. Guosong Liu from MIT. Okay, so he was studying how he was doing the drug screening pathways to look for factors that can increase the neuron plasticity, which is a hallmark for improved memory. So he set up the tissue system, tried to screen different kind of compounds, and by accident, he found out magnesium can effectively increase the neuron plasticity. Okay, so later on, when he was doing a postdoctoral fellowship at Stanford University, he worked with a local biotech company and screened all the magnesium compounds available in the animal model to see which one actually go across the blood-brain barrier. So in his research, he identified that magnesium L-threonate is the only magnesium compound. I think he compared all the compounds that is available on the market at that time, about 20 years ago. So he found out magnesium L-threonate is the only one that can go across the blood-brain barrier, effectively raise the brain magnesium levels. Come back to your question, what is L-threonate? L-threonate is one of the main vitamin C metabolites. Okay, so it is a ligand that is already present in our body, and especially in a higher concentration in our brain, because we take vitamin C all the time. So we have these major metabolites of vitamin C in our body already, and it's actually present in a much higher concentration as it presents in our circulation system. So it indicates that it does have a special role in our brain.
Now, is it true that the L-threonate is kind of acting as a transporter to get the magnesium into the brain? Is that the understanding?
Yes, it is. Actually, there's a published research specifically examining whether it is the L-threonate as a special carrier to carry the magnesium to the brain. It is not very clear how physically whether it's carrying magnesium directly or not, but it is very clear that it is a requirement for the magnesium to go to the brain.
Now you had mentioned briefly in your answer there about brain connections, right? Those plasticity and stuff. Can you explain that a little bit for the audience? What exactly is plasticity, and why is it so important to cognitive function?
Yes. If you think about the cellular mechanisms of signal transduction in the brain, you normally have one neuron cells extend a arm and go to the next neuron cells. So that's forming the connection. Okay, and these connections are important for signal transduction between the neurons, and that is where the memory cognition signaling works. Okay, so the more of these connections, the more that is signaling going on, the more memory functions are happening. Okay, so this kind of connection is an indication of neuron plasticity. They're able to form all these connections. And that is the indication that your neurons are actively working, are transducing these signals, are forming these connections for the memory and cognition. And that is actually the physical evidence for a good memory and signaling, cognitive signaling happening in your brain.
And magnesium is important for all that, right? Magnesium plays a role
Correct.
in helping to make those connections, right? But before we had magnesium threonate, not enough magnesium was getting into the brain probably. But now with this new formula, we can get it in the brain, and we're making those stronger connections. Is that the gist of it?
That is very true, Dr. Mike. So what's happened is that if you recall, over the past decades, we have been emphasized on taking calcium. Okay, it was magnesium wasn't a part of a recommended nutrition, but magnesium is so important. We can only get that from the environment, from our food, from our drinks. And actually, if you look at the food nowadays, the nutrient is much less than we had, let's say, 50 years ago. So if we just eat the normal food, we're not taking the right amount of nutrient that we needed. Yeah. And when we take in the calcium, calcium is important, but sometimes I think we're taking too much calcium because of the advocate for the past, decades. And we are actually changing the balance between calcium and magnesium. So we really need to take the proper amount of magnesium, especially when we're older. We're missing all these minerals, and if we're not taking the right amount, we're not having the proper amount in our brain, in our body, and it's directly related to how our brain and body functions properly. And that is, in my opinion, a big factor contributing to all these problems like neuron degeneration, Alzheimer's, stress, anxiety are truly associated with the lacking of the proper nutrients, especially magnesium.
Yes, I'm happy you brought that up. And I looked at Dr. Mike when you were talking about the magnesium in the food. He talks about that all the time, that even an apple from 40 years ago is not the same
and
as
that's research based.
Right.
Rutgers,
absolutely.
About 10 years ago, did a great study comparing polyphenol levels, mineral levels, and
Yep. So let's transition from the animal research now we know from animal research that the magnesium threonate, it is getting into the brain. It's forming or creating those connections, making them stronger. How does that translate to outcomes in clinical studies in humans? Can you kind of walk us through some of the groundbreaking research that we're seeing in humans?
Sure. We have done several human clinicals on magnesium L-threonate. Okay. So the first human clinicals was focused on older people that have complained about memory, cognition problems, but they're normal people just complaining about, just like when we're getting to a certain age, we notice we have problems in proper memory, cognition, and a randomized placebo-controlled study using a placebo and a group taking Magtein about 2 grams, 1.5 to 2 grams dosage, which actually is only about 120 to 140 milligram of elemental magnesium, which is very low compared to RDA. Okay, so it's 1/3 of the daily recommended dosage of magnesium. And after 6 weeks and 12 weeks, people were examined for a cognitive test, which is a computer-based cognitive test. It is not just subjective questionnaires. It's an objective test. And it was measured before and after. Okay, so after 6 weeks of intake of magnesium, it was shown that there's 4 areas of cognition was measured, and they were significantly improved as compared to the placebo. But most interestingly, when you use the researcher used a composite score, which actually take into account of all these 4 different measurements, which is reflection of the overall brain health. It showed an even higher significant difference versus the placebo. And very interestingly, that if you using the brain age measurements, okay, which is a measurements commonly used in literature, we find out that the Magtein group, which was a certain brain age before, And after it is a 9 years reversal, means that Magnesium make these people brain is 9 years younger by this kind of measurements. So that's
Okay,
very
now we're listening. Hold on.
Wow.
So looking at these brain biological age things, there was like 4 or 5 year. You're saying that the people in the magnesium threonate group became younger by 9 years compared to placebo? Is that, just make sure we're hearing that right?
To be more accurate, okay. So what's happening is that in the people, old people population that was actually complaining about memory loss, cognition, okay, when they measured their cognitive function, which corresponding to the brain age, okay, and that brain age is not just we invented; it's actually published literature. There is
Gotcha. Yeah.
a curve of the measurements of the brain function versus their real age. So that curve is generated through the literature research. Okay, so when we measured the initial population against that curve, so these people, let's say they're 60 years old, but their brain age was around 69 years old. Okay, because they're older compared to their peers, a normal population. Okay, so when they take Magnesium, they're able to reverse back to comparable to their normal peers. So it's rejuvenate your brain. It's making your brain as young as your normal peers.
Right. That's
So
I love
that-
it. Great
I
research.
know.
Yeah.
Has there been any follow-up research? Do we know, I guess, do you need to continue to take it to maintain those benefits?
That's a very good question. We actually tested that idea in the animal study. It's hard to do it in the humans, but we did test that idea in animals. So in the animals, what's happening is that you take Magnesium after 2 weeks, you see the benefit. Okay, so if you stop taking it, the benefit disappeared after 2 weeks. So if you retake it, you're going to another 2 weeks, you're going to see that benefits again. So if that is consistent with our understanding about taking nutrients like magnesium, okay, you do need to take it to maintain the proper levels in your body to have the benefits. But it does take some time to accumulate, and it takes. And if you stop, it will disappear after, in the animal model, it's about two weeks. But very interestingly is that in the human clinicals we have done, and in our personal experience of using this product, its benefit is actually very fast. Okay, that is very unique about Magnesium. You can, in my case, as a consumer, I've been taking it over 10 years, and I felt the focus and the benefits within 30 minutes. I know it's not, we haven't tested scientifically. It's my personal knowledge.
That's your experience. That's okay. Yeah.
That's my experience. And that's a lot of my colleagues and my friends' experience taking it.
Yeah. So one of the questions we already get because of this is, people hear about magnesium threonate, they become very interested in it, especially when you hear research like that, right? But they're already kind of taking a magnesium formula. So then they're confused. Do I still take my general magnesium? Because I was doing that for bone health or whatever, metabolic health systemically, not necessarily for my brain. Can they still take that formula and add magnesium threonate?
I actually have reservations about taking Magnesium with other magnesium products. It could be, because magnesium L-threonate is very bioavailable. It's not only good for the brain, it's actually also very good for other part of the bodies. Okay, for the heart, for the red blood cells, for the bone. We don't have in the human clinicals. We haven't really tested, but in animal studies, the bioavailability is well demonstrated, and it's also I have a lot lot of anecdotal data to see the benefits of it in other part of the system. Okay, so given that said, I think we shouldn't take too much magnesium. Anything we shouldn't take too much. Okay, so I think if you have magnesium in other part of the formula, if you want to take it, you should reduce the amount. Okay, not too much. Okay, or you take it at different times. You don't take it together.
Right.
Now, when you look at some of the studies, I just want to go back to something you said about its bioavailability. Have we identified a comparison, or have you seen any research with comparing red blood cell magnesium levels, like testing with the different forms versus the L-threonate form?
They're published research, not from us, from other people. Okay, so the good thing about magnesium L-threonate, although it was discovered and patented by us, but then in the literature, there is a huge amount of publications from research groups around the world using magnesium L-threonate for their own studies. And so it has been basically demonstrated all the functions we have discovered. Okay, so it's nice to see that it's repeated by other labs around the world. So there are publications comparing magnesium L-threonate with all different kind of magnesiums, and although it's not specific down to the brain, it's just comparing with other source using the traditional methods. Magnesium L-threonate still turn out to be the best bioavailable form. Okay, and in terms of how it's bioavailable compared to other source, one of the things we have to notice that a lot of times when you do the study, you only compare that through the intestine absorption. Okay,
right.
So the real bioavailability is really where it functions. For example, whether it goes to the brain. We have that in animal studies. Okay, it's published in Neuron, compared the magnesium L-threonate versus all the organic magnesium. As an example, it was magnesium gluconate plus milk. That was one of the most organic magnesium tested, put in the figure. And the inorganic magnesium, as example, is magnesium chloride. It was also the most soluble inorganic magnesium compared. So those two representative from all the screening was produced in that figure, which is figure 1 on the Neuron, demonstrate that only magnesium L-threonate, as compared to the most bioavailable organic magnesium, most bioavailable inorganic magnesium, that is the only one that are able to elevate the brain magnesium levels. Okay, so it is important to look at the end results, the physiological functions for the compare of the bioavailability.
I think that's a good point. And we talk about this, the difference between absorption and bioavailability. I think part 1 is obviously getting it through, in the digestive tract into the bloodstream. And we do understand that dosing plays a major role with that as well. The more the actual elemental magnesium that you are taking in at any given time, there's that threshold where the absorption slows down. And so I know you mentioned with the dosing that's typically administered, the 1 to 2 grams, there's about 140 or 140 milligrams of magnesium. So I know that certainly helps to make sure you're not overloading the system where that magnesium is going to be absorbed. But I like how you brought out about the bioavailability. It's not only getting in, we're seeing the magnesium threonate getting into the tissues better.
Right.
Is that what I'm understanding? I just wanted to clarify that point to make sure.
Yes, Dr. Crystal, you said it right. It is not only absorbed to your intestine. It is how it gets into the tissue of function. For example, the brain function, how it gets to the brain, the heart, how it gets to the heart. Okay, and for magnesium L-threonate, MAC10 has been looked in the humans for it entering the blood cells. Okay, so it's actually are able to raise the blood cells magnesium levels. And as direct comparison in the red blood cells versus other magnesium source, I haven't seen that. So I don't think it has been done.
I'm going to switch gears just real quickly, Dr. Gu. A lot of people take magnesium because of the kind of the calming effect at night. Like they use it like with melatonin and stuff, they take it. When do you suggest taking magnesium threonate? Can they, if people are taking magnesium at night, can they just switch to magnesium threonate and do that at night before they go to bed?
That brings out a excellent point. There's, just as you said, a lot of people are taking magnesium for calming. We actually just finished human clinicals on that specific area of interest. So we try to investigate how magnesium L-threonate works, contributing to sleep. Okay, so this is we're still submitting for publication. So this is a unpublished results. I'll just without going to too much detail, I'll give you some peek into the discovery. So what we have noticed is that taking Mactin at first, it's actually for a lot of people who are magnesium deficient, it actually make you very sleepy. But after a while, if you continue taking it, it's actually do not increase your sleeping time, do not necessarily help you to fall asleep. Okay, but what you experience is that when you wake up, you have a full energy, clear mind, and a very productive day. Okay, so with that understanding, we did a human clinical. It's a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized human clinical with placebo and Mactin. So what we found out is that Mactin doesn't, just as we experienced, Mactin doesn't really help you to fall asleep too much, slightly. Doesn't help you stay in bed longer. However, it increased the REM stage and the deep stage, which are the two stages that helps to consolidate the memory, help to improve your cognition, help you to, to your brain to rest and rejuvenate. That has been already known for literature. And Mactin helps in those stages to help you brain to recover, to rejuvenate, so you have a better quality of sleep. And the next day, people are tested, asked you, how do you feel? There's improvement in productivity, there's improvement in mood, there's improvement in clear mental health, there's the huge amount of improvement in the next day's productivity. So that is really what magnesium really does in sleep.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us. I love to hear that.
Hot off the press.
We talk about that a lot. It's not just falling asleep. It's doing something that allows you to go through the stages and cycle through the stages of sleep. So that's great to hear. You're listening to Jennifer Gu. She is a PhD in experimental pathology from the University of California, Los Angeles. Dr. Gu, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, like what would be, for our audience, our listening audience, what would be your take-home message about magnesium threonate?
So magnesium is an important mineral that we need to supplement. And magnesium L-threonate is the one that the brain magnesium, the brain energy, the brain rejuvenator, in my opinion. And it is a safe ingredient if you take in the recommended dosage. And it is a magnesium that has not only helps with your brain, actually it helps with many other functions of your body. So I have been taking it for over 10 years. Since I'm probably one of the first person to take it, and I know I felt the benefit, and most people can feel the benefit of focus and the concentration very quickly and effectively.
It's nice to know that the investigators and the developers actually take their product.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of a good thing. You wanted to clarify one more thing, maybe?
Yes. And so the trademark form of magnesium L-threonate, you mentioned it a couple of times. This is Mag-teen. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct. Yes.
Dr.
And I'd like to say my mom also takes it.
I'm not saying your mom's sharp.
She is.
She's on
She
it.
is. This is one that when she runs out, she calls me up.
That's great. That's awesome. Dr. Gu, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this was a wealth of information.
Yes.
And I know our audience is just going to eat this up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Thank you, Dr. Crystal. Thanks for having me.
Our sponsor, Life Extension, would like to say thank you to all our listeners, right? We have a growing number of listeners, and we're really proud of that. And Life Extension would like to offer everyone that listens a 10% discount at lifeextension.com on your whole order,
Yes.
right? Just when you're at checkout, all you got to do is type in podcast, and you'll get 10% off. That's lifeextension.com, podcast, 10%. Pretty good. So don't forget, you can also go to liveforeverish.com, where there's so many other episodes you can check out. When you do, go ahead and download, like, and share, and of course, subscribe so you never miss a show. It's the 1-2 punch. We do an email, and you can join Life Extension's newsletter, and then number 2, you can subscribe. So that's Life Extension. No, that's liveforeverish.com. Lifeextension.com is the podcast 10%.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Mike. That's Dr. Crystal. Thanks for listening.